NC State recently came forward with a study which stated that children who take advantage of the Opportunity Scholarship perform better in school. Here to talk about that and other issues is Brian Jodice. He is the head of Parents for Educational Freedom. Brian, it's always great seeing you. What did you make of this study?
Well, I think it's a great first step, Rob. If you look at where we're at, we've long believed that having this program would come with accountability measures. And this, I think, is a first chance to do an assessment as to how Opportunity Scholarship students are doing compared to their public school counterparts. And what's really neat is this is an independent research team from NC State who did this study. They took OSP students and measured them against public school counterparts. And by doing that, they set different measurements in place, not just demographics, but what's really important is end of grade test scores were used. So essentially these students all started in the same place. You introduced a variable, the scholarship, and the school of their parents' choice, and they started to perform better in this comparison. So I think it's a great first step.
Critics of the study said there are just too many other variables that could have played into the results.
Sure, understandable. There's also a lot of variables that go into why parents are making these choices as well. And so we look at that, and I think you've got to look at how do we continue to do assessments like this, maybe make them a little more robust, or maybe even look for alternative ways to measure accountability across the state. Not just test scores, but what are parents saying? What are the schools saying? Why are they making these decisions in the first place? Those are the things that we look at as an advocacy organization and try to highlight from the work we do here in Raleigh.
Well, you mentioned accountability. Critics have also pointed out that some of these schools just do not have the same sort of accountability as public schools.
And you know what, Rob, I think that's a great point, and I like your word there, same. So we often hear there's none or they're unaccountable. I saw Governor Cooper this week saying unaccountable private schools. I think the governor knows that's not true. These schools are accountable. The question I have is accountable to who? To him, to the legislature, to taxpayers? Yes, but what about to parents? I think parents are the ultimate accountability point here as it relates to these programs because they're the ones who are making these choices. So I think we have to have all of those things on the table, evaluate all of those factors as we move forward, and look at the real success. Academic outcomes, critically important. But what are families looking for? Record numbers are applying. Families are looking for these options for a reason, and we need to highlight that.
I've asked you this before. I've asked your predecessor about this before. Listen, for a lot of people, they say there's limited dollars for education, public education in North Carolina. If we're going to set aside some for these opportunity scholarships, then essentially we're taking away from public education.
That's right. And you know, you've heard us say this before, I just don't believe that. And if you look at the vast majority of spending that happens on a daily basis across our state, as it relates to education, it's going towards public education, and it should. There's 1.5 million students there. That's a huge percentage. This is a small percentage of that. About 8,000 students are currently on the Opportunity Scholarship Program. If we can't set aside some dollars to help low-income families in our state, I think we need to evaluate the way we do the budget process. And right now, it's set up to help those families, low-income families, special needs families with our other scholarship programs. What we're saying is it doesn't have to be one or the other. Let's put some options on the table, and let's provide some resources to the families who need it most.
Okay, Brian, as I said, it's always great seeing you. Give us a website if anybody wants to learn a little bit more.
That's great. We're at PEFNC, Parents Educational Freedom North Carolina, PEFNC.org. They can find us there.
Once again, Brian, great seeing you. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Rob.
That's our end of conversation for today. Right now, it's time to check in with the weather on the One's Forecast Center.